so cool or a big cheapskate. I'm Kyla Bauer. I'm the head of operations for Pacient. I apologize in advance because I have a cough that has decided to never leave. So I hope I don't disgust you all if I cough every once in a while. So Pacient, one of the top expenses for businesses are health benefits. And we have decided to start a program called Health Buddy in order to save companies an estimate of $1,500 to $2,000 per employee every year. Which for companies of about 100 people is an estimate of $150,000 to $200,000 every year. All of us may have recognized there are some crazy prices on our medical bills in the last couple of years. The U.S. has the highest spending on healthcare in the world, and I apologize for bringing in charts. I just want you to know that these numbers are real. I'm not making them up. But if you follow this chart, if you follow the bottom line, you can see how much the U.S. spends per person, and it's actually off the charts now. We spend about $10,300 per person on healthcare each year. But when you compare it to basic health outcomes, such as how long each of us is supposed to live, we're making incremental changes. And when you compare it to all of the other countries in the world who are spending about half of what we're spending, we rank about 26 for basic health outcome of life expectancy. So there's an obvious discrepancy between how much we're spending and the actual value that we get out of it. Higher cost in healthcare means higher cost in health insurance. And the average, sorry, you guys can't see this. The average family health insurance plan cost over $18,000 last year. The average health plan for individuals costs over $6,000. And the Kaiser Family Foundation is a nonprofit organization that has been tracking these costs. And I know there's a lot of bars on this graph here, but all I want you to pay attention to is the top bar, which is in 1999, which is a lot smaller than the bottom bar, which is in 2017. So every year,
No kidding.
yeah, every year, the cost of health insurance has been going up 11.8%. To put that into perspective, the average U.S. salary has been going up 0.03% since 1999. So that's why employees are feeling a huge pinch in their checkbooks. Companies have said that they have found a way around this to protect their employees from these high costs in healthcare. And they do it by cutting out the middleman. So by cutting out health insurance companies do something called self-funding. A very simplified version of self-funding is that the amount of money that employees and companies pay every month, instead of that going to a health insurance company, that actually goes into an account that is owned and managed by the company itself. This is a big deal because 60% of Americans that get their health insurance through their job are actually on a self-funded health plan like this. So there's great potential for savings and having a big impact on the healthcare system. Despite these claims, the Kaiser Family Foundation has also been tracking these costs. And if you look at the light blue line, for all of you who can see it, that's what the average family plan costs at a self-funded company. If you look at the dark blue line, that's what the average family plan costs at a not self-funded company. So since 1999, they've been going up at about the same exact rate and cost about the same exact price. Our bold claim at Pacient is that if anybody is going to save money, it's actually the employees themselves, because they are the primary decision makers who ultimately decide what kind of health care they're going to get. So for the last year and a half, our company has been working with individuals to help them through the confusion they face when they go through the healthcare system. And as a byproduct, we have been able to save individuals anywhere from a few $100s all the way up to over $100,000 just through basic education and conversations. And to give you just one example of the hundreds of ways that we are able to do this, I'm going to tell you a little story about when I used to work for a medical management company. We managed the business side of things for doctor practices out in California. So, how many of you have been in for a routine physical ever to see your doctor? Okay, great. You may recall that when you go in, the first person that you visit with is a medical assistant. And that person runs a series of tests on you. One of those tests is likely to be a blood test. And out of this blood test, they're going to look for about 20 different things to see if you have two of the most common health conditions in the United States. Do you have heart disease or do you have diabetes? Well, there was a laboratory that took this small test that would normally cost about $40, maybe up to $150 at the highest, and they added a whole package of other tests to it. So instead of 20 things, now they're looking for 86 things in your blood. Most of these tests are actively discouraged by the American Medical Association as being unnecessary for most people. And so what this laboratory did was, with this larger test, they jacked up the price from $40 to $3,700 in order to defraud your insurance company. If you work for a self-funded company, you are your own insurance company. There were about 3,000 doctors nationwide that ended up giving this test to every single patient who came through their doors for a routine physical, including some of the doctors that worked at the practices where I worked. If some of the large insurance companies are suing the laboratory now, but if you're a self-funded company, there's no mechanism in place right now for you even to be aware that this kind of thing is happening to your employees. And so what we do at Health Buddy, a part of our services, is that we work right alongside employees to train them to be smart and courteous consumers when they go into for their doctor's visit, to help with things like this. To give you an example, I hope I print it off enough, but I'm going to pass these around. One of the many organizations that we have partnered with is Choosing Wisely, based out of California. And they have found that if patients just started asking 5 questions when they go in for their doctor's visit, these 5 questions help make a huge difference in helping to prevent people from getting unnecessary services and preventing them from getting exorbitant prices on their medical bills. On top of this, the companies that we work with, we are able to notify them when something as serious as fraud is happening so that they can take a closer look at some of those claims coming through and be aware that they're happening. To give you a broader picture of what the Health Buddy program is, we follow 3 simple steps. The first step is a free company-wide survey where we test your employees about how much they understand about their health plan, and also see what are the common obstacles they're facing when they're trying to get medical care. As a follow-up of this survey, and through continued dialogue with employees, we set up a year-long educational program using things such as easy-to-understand infographics, short videos, even private Facebook pages, to help answer employees' questions about their health plan and train them to become confident, smart consumers when they go to their doctor's office. A third part of this is 6% of employees drive 80% of healthcare costs at a company. So it is with these 6% of employees that we provide intensive one-on-one support, helping them with things like organizing their medical bills, making sure they understand what their medical bills are saying, supporting communication with their doctors, and even locating community programs that can help them with things at home. We have a very small company, but we are able to help with a wide variety of healthcare services because we work with a huge nationwide network of doctors, hospitals, insurance and government experts, attorneys, and community programs, all that have the same goal in mind to help companies and their employees find valuable medical services and for reasonable prices. Because of the network we use and the technology we use, we're very efficient at what we do. Our Health Buddy program is just $5 to $10 per month per employee. And research has shown that companies that follow the kinds of services we provide are able to save $1,500 to $2,000 per employee every year. Now, our target market is generally self-funded companies that are about 500 employees or less. These companies are spending roughly $141 billion every year on their health plan. If our company can help just support 10% of these employees, it's about 1.4 million people. And our Health Buddy program would bring in $14 million. This would just be a baseline. Once we have concrete numbers on how much money we're actually saving companies, we would take about 5% of that savings. And our Health Buddy program would go from $14 million to $120 million. Are there any questions? Yes?
On your slide with the $3,700 laboratory tests,
Yes.
were the ones at the bottom, were those tests ones that were unnecessary?
That picture was just an example of what the report looks like.
Okay.
It's actually a lot longer. It's about 5 pages long.
Okay, because the reason I ask is that it is not standard, just for instance, screen for a lot of those tests that are at the bottom, like ApoB. But I mean, my first cohorts confirmed that the standard screenings they do for cardiovascular risk are horrible, actually, and they're like maybe a third or a quarter as effective as ApoB or some of the others that were listed below. And so my concern would be, and my real question is, have you actually confirmed that in those cases where you're intervening in medical care, that you're not actually making the situation worse from a long-term health outcome standpoint?
That's a great question. The thing is, we're not a medical company. And so we're not making these decisions for our patients. And that's never our goal. And we try to make it very clear, we are not attorneys and we're not medical experts. What we're relying on are the medical experts that are out there. So our network of thousands of doctors and all of the research coming out, we are relying on that research.
The study is cited 468 times. I mean, physicians still give surgeries that are known to not be effective. The general body of medical knowledge is always behind where some people are. As I said, it's dangerous to be making that because you are intervening in people's medical lives.
So our goal is to help people have dialogues with their doctors. That's what we train people to do. So instead of you going into your doctor's visit and going through everything that... How many of you are comfortable asking questions at your doctor's office? Good. Most people don't do that. Most people do not ask questions at their doctor's office. So what we're trying to teach people to do, because the doctor is often an authority figure, and some people just feel like it would be disrespectful to do that. So we're trying to train people, start having a dialogue with your doctor. When they say, I'm going to order these tests, it's important that you ask a question. Why is this test important? What happens if I don't do it? Are there alternatives? Are there safer ways to do it? And for really serious things such as cancer treatment or heart surgeries, a lot of people don't get a second diagnosis to see if that's the appropriate treatment for them. And so it's training people to do that, because you're absolutely right. Our job is not to make decisions for people. That would be horrible, and we don't want to interfere with medical treatment.
Next question? Be shy. Here.
I think the slide where you focus on the cost of healthcare increasing since 1999 versus individuals' paychecks, increasing like barely any. I think that spoke very loudly when I heard it, and it made me wonder, I guess medicine has advanced so far in the past 2 or 3 decades. And this is like an internal question I'm having with myself, are the costs increasing because there's so many, I guess the outcomes are so much more precise, and there's so many more, medical solutions that there's so many things charging. I'm trying to understand why that cost goes up 11% per year, but consumers actually can't afford it. Where does that growth happen? That's just something I'm asking myself.
Well, we could crowdsource.
Serious, but it just seems like it's crazy that it increases so much all the time.
Yeah, I'll try to answer it. That's why we compare ourselves to other countries. That's the important part of it, because there are other countries that are actually doing better at their basic health outcomes than we are, and they're spending about half the price. So it is a question of why in the world are we so different? And so far, research has shown that about 30 to 50% of our healthcare costs are spent on waste, fraud, and abuse. Which is why training people to ask questions is so important, because it's obvious that we're wasting money. If that helps answer your question. Okay.
And depress us even more.
Could you flesh out a little more, I would like it to be a little more explicit, how you, from a marketing standpoint, how you're going to go into a company and say, I'm going to save you money. You're paying $5 to $10. You have 100 employees. Per month, $500. A month. How explicitly you're going to market this to people for a company to look at you and go, yes, I need to sign up.
You have touched on our hardest obstacle. There is a lot of educational hurdle that we have to overcome before we even start with our pitch. And so we have tried to condense as much as possible. The thing is that the price of our service is the same price as any wellness program. And there are companies that pay $150 per employee every year for a wellness program that doesn't show any cost savings at all. And so we're at least compatible with something that people are familiar with, which is paying for a wellness program.
Is it tax deductible? Would it be tax deductible for a business?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to look into that.
It should be.
It's an expense.
You would think it would be,
Yeah.
but, yes. But that's something to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, you can at least get a write-off on it, business is much more inclined to do it.
Got it. That's good to look into. Thank you.
Yeah, Kayla, towards the end you showed, if I recall, a couple of figures, $14 million, $20 million based on some 5% assumption. Were those expected revenue figures? Is that what those were? I kind of missed that part.
Yes, they were kind of back of the envelope
Okay,
estimates
just
for
wanted
revenue.
a little clarity. Thank you.
Question? This is like a. So, what's the user experience like? So, how do you engage with the employees of the self-funded companies?
That's a great question. So right now, a lot of companies have a way to automatically email their employees. So part of our education would be to be sending out information regularly to the employees, including those simple infographics, short videos. But we also want to engage with employees where they're at. And so we do things like private Facebook pages and ways for them to just text us. We try to make it as easy as possible for them to reach us. And through something like the private Facebook page, they can ask a simple question about their health plan and we can help answer it. So they have answers to their questions immediately.
Do you still have your website as kind of a community forum where people can come in and you have subject matter experts blogging on your site? Are you still doing that?
Yeah, so we do still have a website where people can come in and do a search basically for any kind of information that they have. We have a little over 360 articles right now that have answered some of the most common questions that we've gotten that people have about the healthcare system. So we do have a very strong foundation of content already, but we're trying to break it down into smaller pieces that are a little bit more palatable for people to learn.
Kyla, just a comment from someone who's lost both parents due to kind of a malpractice. This is something I wish we had known about 20 years ago. I lost my father to a procedure that he didn't need. There was another procedure that they could have done. And I lost my mother to a pharmaceutical company. Simple question is, what are the side effects? Had we known the side effects were shutting down the liver and other organs, kidneys, we would have said no. So thank you. I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it is very, very needed and very necessary. And to answer your question about hospitals and the cost of medicine, I mean, I've been around for a while. I'm not going to say my age. But I do remember when Barnes Hospital and Jewish Hospital were separate and were both losing money, and we're trying to figure out a way how they could be profitable, like most hospitals. And of course, the solution was we need to fill beds. And filling beds is the solution that they came up with, which is a problem you have, which is sales.
I know you focused on completely self-funded plans, but I think a lot of employers are doing, maybe offering high deductible health plans with health savings accounts associated with it. And then other companies are using an insurance company that's kind of acts as a self-funded plan. Star Mark is one of those, for example. So really the benefit is to the employees to maximize their dollars in HSA. Is that part of your target market, or is that possible?
Yes, it is absolutely possible. The reason why we focused on self-funded companies is because they're in complete control over how much their health insurance costs every year. So that was our initial target. But we have found that a lot of companies are moving to high deductible health plans, and this kind of money could have a huge, or this kind of savings could have a huge impact on how much your employees are able to save. And so for companies that have high deductible health plans, this would be a program that would be beneficial.
Okay,
Can I get another question?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right.
One more, then we're
Mike,
gonna
I guess this is more of an incentive than a question, and so if you want to have a question, I mean, to some extent, your competition is what my wife and I called Dr. Internet. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of your competition to some extent. Some person, I mean, my wife, well, she has a stubbed toe and she's going to Google it for the next 3 days. But there's so much disinformation, there's so many there's so much, and you just can't rely on anything. And so, to some extent, this is your competition, but you're providing actual medical people at the end person that's going to be providing information are medical people, not some random person on some random website who had an experience going to the doctor once. So I think that's, to some extent, that's another part of your marketing, your value add. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, one more. We have any more questions before we wrap things?
How much time do you have to have with an account before you can actually demonstrate or recognize savings? Does it have to be an entire year before you can say this is what you've saved as a company using our program? And because of that, have you looked at just going straight contingency, saying, there's no fees, we'll just, our fees will come out of what you save, so then they have nothing to lose. So just wondering if you could share some of that.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that are doing it. They're known as patient advocates. So you can hire a patient advocate now who would just go off of cost savings. It's really hard to predict what kind of medical events that your employees are going to go through, so it's hard to know if we're going to it's hard for us to predict what your spend is going to be on a year-to-year basis. And so if you wanted to do that, there are patient advocates who do that, and they charge an exorbitant price. They would take 25% of your savings because it's such a fluctuating market. And so that would be one of our competitors. We just think that the education is valuable enough to train people, because it's really hard for us to come in to save you costs on the back end, which is what's happening right now. So people get this crazy bill, and then we would have to go in to try to negotiate it. It's really hard to do it that way, and it takes a lot more time, and it costs a lot more money. So if we can come in on the front end and do the education, which we think $5 to $10 per month is pretty reasonable to train employees to help prevent that from happening in the first place, it's much easier and much more affordable. So that's why we're going it from the front end instead.
Great. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.